Hey everybody, thanks so much for checking out Better Student Ministry. My name's Mark Freeman and this is Jared Barry, and together we have over 30 years of youth ministry experience.
We hope this resource was a blessing to you and your team. Along with every training video, we've included a downloadable PDF filled with discussion questions for you to wrestle through and contextualize the topic we've discussed. If you guys are interested in doing a deeper dive, we also have a podcast that's available where Mark and I talk a lot more about the topics we've talked about today. You can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, and Facebook by simply searching Better Student Ministry. Hey everybody, welcome back to Better Student Ministry. We're really excited to do another video for you today, and we want to talk about the topic, helping students live on mission.
It may seem obvious that if we're youth leaders, if we're running a youth group, that living on mission is a big part of what we do. But the reality is, if we're not intentional about creating opportunities to live on mission, our youth group can become very self-absorbed, very protect us, very huddled together, don't let the bad world out there affect us. This is a safe place.
Yeah.
And I think we miss a big piece of the Great Commission, which is to go and tell others. Well, we don't miss a big piece of it. We miss it. Right?
Yeah.
Go and make disciples.
To make disciples is to then make disciples. That's what the look of a disciple is, right?
Yeah. So, and I think with good intentions, we're like, all right, we want to really invest in these kids. We want to see them look more like Jesus. We want to see them act more like Jesus. And we forget so much of who Jesus is I came not for the healthy, but for the sick.
Yeah.
And so we want to be intentional about creating opportunities for students to understand how we live out our faith, how we live missionally, and we have to think about other people in that process.
Yeah. It's important too to note this is not just going to happen in youth ministry.
Yeah.
In fact, all the temptation would be for this to not happen. You've got parents who are like, they just want you to kind of protect their kids and not have them be around bad people and only keep them from doing bad things. All around us, I think, will be the temptation to not live on mission. So this won't happen on accident. We've got to be really intentional. And so we've got some thoughts. Mark, why don't you start us off on how do we help students engage a life where they live on mission?
Yeah, the first place that we want to think about is how do we do that with them gathered together with us? How do we start to teach them and help them to understand and provide opportunities for them to start to think about others outside of themselves? So just to give some practical thoughts, and I'd love to hear some of the suggestions you've got as well from your own ministry experiences, is start to think about, from a planning standpoint, what can I do that begins to get them to think, okay, I'm personalizing my faith, and part of that is sharing it with other people. So the environment that you create on a Wednesday night can communicate a lot to the students about, this is a place where I'm supposed to be bringing my lost friends or my seeking friends or my friends that are anywhere in their journey of life trying to figure out who God is, if there is a God. And so think about the environment that you're creating. And I think some simple little things like the way seating is set up can communicate what type of environment that you're having. Most youth groups, and I'm not saying this is bad, I'm just saying there's maybe something better. A lot of times when you walk into the room, all the chairs are pointed forward, looking forward, in a kind of a classroom sort of a feel to it. And I think there's a potential limiting factor there in the way that you have your room set up that communicates something different about the mission that we live in. I think sometimes if we sit face to face, all of a sudden we're communicating now relationships are really, really important. When we're sitting in a teaching environment, and all the chairs are faced forward to the front for whatever the preaching is going to be or whatever your things are for the night, it communicates this is about me receiving. When we sit face to face, I think we begin to communicate this is about relationship and interaction and other people outside of myself. And I think that communicates mission to students. We used to talk about, too, this idea of there should be an empty seat at your table, wherever it is that you're sitting. And the idea being, this is for someone who's not here right now. Who can I bring to sit with me? Who can I bring to sit next to me and bring into relationship with me? So that's just one thought. I've got some others as well, but I'd love to hear one from you as well.
No, I love that idea. And I think you create culture. So what do we celebrate? Do we celebrate students who bring their friends and say, this is something that matters, and we want to see all of you guys, because what that really means is they're engaging their faith in a public way. Yeah. They're not afraid of it, right? And so I think that's important. One of the things I would encourage you as the primary leader to think about is in my preaching calendar or my whatever maybe I'm not preaching every week, but whatever I'm communicating, we undervalue the culture we create in the long term. So if they get to hear you talk in the long term, that has an impact. And so when you're thinking through your sermons or the discussion that you're going to create and facilitate, is there an emphasis? Are you always moving your students towards the understanding that what it means to engage in the gospel is to live on mission?
Yeah.
What God has done in you, he wants to do through you.
That's good.
That is what Christianity is.
Yeah.
And sometimes we only focus on what God wants to do in them.
Yeah.
And so they start to think that Christianity is just about changing them and their behavior. We never finish the second part, which is he wants to do it through you.
Yeah.
You have to build that into every talk. You have to build that into every Q&A session, everything that you have, because in the long run, they'll start to understand I can't be a Christian and not engage with mission.
Sure. And when you begin to frame that internal change and how it relates to the relationships around me, I think it's because of those relationships around us that allows us to see that we are in need of a savior.
Yeah.
If we were created in isolation and there was no relationship around us, we would never even know we have a need for a savior, because we would never know we're out of relationship with other people.
Yeah.
So the best way for us to assess what God is doing in us is to see how it influences the relationships outside of us as well.
One other practical challenge I would have when it comes to this is think through, when you're finishing up your talk or your time together, of actually challenging your students in a practical way for that next week. So for example, we would do things like, hey, in this next week, look for an opportunity to serve a fellow student in your school. And next week, we want to hear about what that looked like. Or, hey, this week, look for an opportunity to invite one friend to this event we're doing. Hey, this week, give them a practical challenge that you can follow up and ask them about. It's a real life way for them to internalize what it means to live on mission, where maybe they want to, but they don't know how. This way, you're saying to them, here's what it could look like.
And it takes youth ministry, and it doesn't make it just one of those tear off one-a-day calendars, right? Okay, boom, we've got that one done. We've communicated that, move on to the next day. It's this is lived out every day in our life. I have an opportunity now as an adult leader to follow up with you. I can give you a reminder throughout the week, say, hey, I'm praying for you as you're working on this week.
Yeah.
And it makes it a life and not just a thing to check off the checklist. The last little thing about this internal piece that I want to talk about too is thinking about how you run your youth ministry throughout a particular month or from a week-to-week basis. So one of the things that we would do is each night kind of had a specific feel and focus to it, and mission was a piece of that each time. So the first Wednesday of each month, we met on Wednesday nights. The first Wednesday of each month was intentional about we would call it our community night. The students knew that the beginning of each month was a community night. It took a couple of weeks for them to get used to it, but it's a great entry point. Sometimes it's intimidating to bring a student into your youth group and not knowing what's going to happen that night. It's intimidating enough for you to walk in there, much less bring a friend along with you. And so we created safe, kind of like easy en routes for students. So our community nights, it was focused on sharing life together, doing something fun together. Usually it involved eating. Who doesn't love doing that? And it was an easy introduction to the group. Hey, come with me on this community night. And then next week, hey, you really enjoyed it? It's great. Hey, come with me the next night. And it takes on a new shape, a new form. And we were really about providing en routes and ramps onto ministry. But it takes thinking through your schedule to be able to do that.
I love that. So those are some of the internal things you can do, like the week-to-week stuff. I want to shift the gears a little bit and talk about some of the external things. What are things that you can do that happen outside of your regular meeting time or space? And one of the things I want to focus on is scheduling missional moments or missional opportunities for your students. Yeah. And so for us, a big part of this was, it looked kind of three different ways. Number one, we would have one day or even less than a day, maybe it was a couple hour opportunities for students to engage on mission. So one of the things we did is we lived near a local high school, and there was a bunch of outdoor basketball courts where every day after school, there would be almost 100 students out there playing ball. And so we would do this thing where before youth group, we would invite students to come with us. We would take waters and we would go over and we would hand out waters, and we would just look to have conversations. And we would encourage the students, hey, look to have conversations. Let's invite some of these guys to youth group tonight with us. And a lot of them, when they first started, were terrible at it. A lot of them were scared, but it was an easy opportunity to engage in mission. Here's people who probably don't know Jesus. Let's go talk to them. Yeah. Let's give them water and let's invite them to come with us.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that we scheduled. That was just an hour or two thing.
Yeah.
We would also do these moments where we would have maybe one day events or a couple day events that were local things. So we live near New York City. We would go work with homeless ministries or food shelters or food banks. And it was an opportunity to kind of serve and stretch out in mission in a way that took a little bit even more investment than just an hour.
Yeah, and when we think of missions, I think our brain first thinks international missions, right? Which I think is great. And quite honestly, if one of your discipleship goals in your youth ministry is with whatever time you have with a student between their, whenever they come into your youth ministry, if one goal is they have an opportunity to go on an international mission trip, it's an awesome goal and a great opportunity, which you have to provide opportunity for. But it doesn't have to just be that. And some kids are just not going to be ready for that. Some kids don't have the financial means to do that, even with fundraising and things like that. So think about what are some ways that every kid in your youth ministry has an opportunity to engage in mission at some point in their youth ministry experience. And I would say at least once every 2 years. So it becomes a regular part of their life. So one way that we would do this practically is because of the schedule that we would have in our youth ministry, every 4 weeks, there's a fifth week in the month. And that fifth week became a very practical mission type experience or a different type of experience. And so I would connect with local organizations in our area and find out, is there something we can do together? I can leverage the manpower of all the students in the room to do something that would be a benefit to them and how they're serving and connecting with the community. And we'll do it together and leverage our time and manpower. And it gets us thinking about the organizations that are in our community, how we can partner with them, how we can connect with them, and we can think about other people other than just ourselves.
No, I love that. We would do the same. We would leverage opportunities like Thanksgiving, and we worked with a low-income shelter, and we would say, hey, we want to provide Thanksgiving baskets for all the people that are in the shelter this year. And we would come together as a youth group and we'd prepare them all and we'd make the food and get together. We lived near a boardwalk. And so we'd go down to the boardwalk and we'd bring waters and we'd just offer to pray for people, encourage people. And all these little opportunities and moments that we would invite students to be a part of. And what it said over time is, this is who we are. Yeah. This is what it means to be a follower of Jesus. Yeah. It's to live a life on mission, a life that's serving those around us.
And can I say something kind of controversial? Those in touch points with your community, with other people, with those that are just living their lives, doesn't always have to, in that moment, reap a spiritual response.
Sure.
It's okay to just love people and care for people and then not get frustrated or write it off when nobody responds to the gospel of something, or maybe even at that moment not have an opportunity for them to respond. Just know they're loved, and this is not a spiritual exchange like I'll give you something good if you're willing to do something spiritual for me. Sometimes we're just loving and caring for people in relationship on an ongoing basis with them.
The concept we would use is work for the good of your community.
It's good.
Sometimes that means just picking up trash, right? That no one sees. But I think that's Christianity lived out. So schedule those moments. If you don't put them in your schedule, if you don't make them part of what you do, they won't happen. So thanks so much, guys, for listening to this video. We want to encourage you to help your students live on mission in a more profound way. We have some questions for you to consider and wrestle through. If you've got other leaders, maybe you want to share this with them as well. And you guys can think about, how do you help your students live on mission in a more profound way? Thanks so much. We'll see you next time. Question number 1. What are we currently doing in our youth service that communicates mission matters? Question number 2. How could we better communicate to students that what God does in you, He wants to do through you? Question number 3. In the next 6 months, what sort of missional opportunities could we provide for students? Thanks for checking out Better Student Ministry. If you enjoyed this content, feel free to share it with a friend. You can always find our videos by searching Better Student Ministry on either Facebook or YouTube. And if you want to dive deeper into the content we discussed today, we've got a podcast available for you on both SoundCloud and iTunes, or on our YouTube channel. Please like, subscribe, share it with people who are around you. We hope it's been a blessing to you. If you've got questions or content you'd love us to discuss, feel free to email us at betterstudentministry@gmail.com.